I see it as a little bit more empowering, that there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. If you're in a coaching environment and you're empowered to let me know what it is that you would like to see in your life to be different. Those thoughts, those beliefs that you have in your head, they're telling you a story that is not true. And it is impacting your level of happiness. It's not only about what you say, it's about your energy. I can walk into a room and I can feel your energy without even speaking to you. I can feel whether it's positive or negative. It's the difference of I want you to be X versus asking the question, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What do you want? What feels good to you?
Welcome to the Doing the Work podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Schindler, and I am absolutely excited to have my next guest on the show, Barb Steinberg. Welcome to Doing the Work.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. You work in a field that's very near and dear to my heart, and probably a lot of people listening to this show as well, but I don't want to steal your thunder. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I have the privilege of being a teen life coach for girls ages 15 to 25 and a parent coach to parents who are raising tween and teen girls. I'm a social worker in terms of education, used to be a therapist, and have really worked with teenagers since I was a teenager at age 19 in my internship as a social work student.
Wow. So you did bachelor's in social work and then also went on to get your master's. Okay.
I did.
Yeah, I had a similar experience kind of. Always thought it was crazy, as such a young person and being so young in the field that they kind of just let you jump into their, like one of my internships was at a therapeutic treatment center for people with like long-term persistent mental illnesses, and it kind of made me really nervous as a student. So.
Oh yeah. I remember being, for my master's program, I was a therapist and I was a 21-year-old and I was working with married couples.
Yeah.
What did I know?
Yeah.
Not much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's how you learn, and look what that all of that work got you to where you are now. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So you just kind of figure it out. I'm super curious. As I was preparing for this show, you work with a very niche group. Like you've really identified who you want to work with, and I'm kind of curious where that came from. How did you make that choice?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, I was given the opportunity in my internship as a young social worker still in school to work with teens. And I really fell in love with them and I could so identify with them. I wasn't that far away from them in age. And, I had several jobs after graduating from grad school. And one of my last jobs that I had before I became a mom was at a local nonprofit here in Austin, Texas called the Girls Empowerment Network. And that was focused on, tween and teen girls. And it was at that time that I just really fell in love with really wanting to support and help girls feel good about themselves, feel like that they're able to accomplish what they want in the world and believe in themselves. And then when I became a mom, there were a lot of serendipitous things that occurred that led me to this world of coaching and the ability to work for myself and have a nice work-life balance so I could also raise my son.
Yeah. So I was actually just about to ask, do you have daughters?
I always say it's like the biggest cosmic joke. Like I've spent my whole life, dedicated to learning about girls and researching girls. And then I was given a boy, which obviously I knew very little about. So it's funny, but I really do now see in hindsight why it turned out that way. I get to be in these girls' lives in a really important, impactful way, but I don't have any of the resistance because I'm not their mom or their dad.
Yeah.
So I really get to have a beautiful impact and a meaningful part of their lives in this role.
Yeah, I always I can identify with that. I think I really enjoyed working with teens myself, and why because one, I had, as we all do, had challenges as a young person, and and so I really felt like I could relate to, some of these kids, and also in some ways almost get to help them in a way that, like, I wish someone had stepped in my life in this way, and
Yes.
and kind of take on that role. And like you said, I'm not your mom, I'm not your dad, I'm not your teacher. I get this
Yeah.
special little role.
Oh, absolutely. I say often, I would have loved a teen life coach when I was a girl. I would have loved a Barb in my life. It really could have helped.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of almost, I mean, obviously very different because coaching is different than what I'm about to say. But, like Big Brothers Big Sisters is an
mhm.
organization that puts adults, positive adults, in like in young people's lives. It's kind of similar to
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. It all matters. It all counts. I don't think you can have enough people that care about you and want the best for you in your life.
No, absolutely. So when you started your career, as did you start coaching the teens first, or did you start coaching the parents first?
I started coaching the teens first, and I had a long history of working with teenagers. So that's where my mind and my heart went. And then the longer I did the work, and built into the coaching packages are sessions with parents. But I learned pretty quickly that parents need as much, if not more, help than the girls. And now, having done this for so many years, I really do see that parents often don't know what to do, and so they're seeking a professional to quote unquote fix whatever needs to be fixed in their child's life, when really where I'm coming from now is that I really want to empower parents to give them the tools, because they're with their children multiple hours a day. I'm with them 1 hour a week. And I really want to empower parents to feel like they know what to say and they have got the tools to make the positive impact.
Yeah, I think that's something I found when working with teens. Also, again, I worked in the juvenile justice system, so these are kids who had gotten in trouble. They had done something that got them in trouble with the law, and I actually worked for a very unique attorney, a defense attorney, whose mission in life was when he represented a young person that they never reoffended again. So my job as a social worker was to try and get to the root of what is it. And a lot of the
Yes.
times when I was kind of getting to the root, the parents were oftentimes, not pointing fingers, but how
Mhm.
the child was brought up was oftentimes some of the issue. So I think it's really smart on your part that you work with both.
Yeah, I agree. And I love
You're like, that's why I do it.
it.
Um, yeah. So tell me a little bit. So walk me through this a little bit. You get a new teen client, a girl. Um, where do you start? How does the process go? Like, I guess, is it really individualized with like what they're dealing with? I'd love to kind of hear more about that.
Yeah, it is highly individualized. So the first step is a parent will reach out via email. I'll set up what I call an inquiry call, just a 20-minute complimentary call, just to get a sense of what is it this parent wants their daughter to get from coaching. What is her daughter experiencing in her life? I want to make sure that it's a good match, that coaching is the best form of treatment at this time, and that I'm the right person based on that call, based on that information. The next step is a 90-minute parent only intake where it's like a psychosocial assessment. I'm asking lots of questions about all different areas of their child's life and their family life to get a sense of everything that's going on and get a better sense of the parents' goals for coaching, because I see the parents as a client as well. And then we work in coaching packages of 6 and 10 sessions. And in the first coaching package, it's called a foundational coaching package. So we're building the foundation of our coaching relationship. We're building rapport and trust. And I have specific tools that I use for the first 4 sessions with that teen to get to know her and to help her to get to know herself and to get clear on her coaching goals. So then that last session, session 6, in that first package, I'm meeting back up with the parents. I've talked with, now I have a better sense, is this a good match? Am I the best person for this child? And are we a good fit? And then we'll move forward from there. It's very individualized depending on what that girl is dealing with. and what it is that she wants to change in her life or feel better about or have more of or less of. So it's very personalized.
Are you finding in this relationship, so again, the parent reached out first, right? They're the one who felt like there was some need for this. And then you start working with the teen. Is the teen, the girl, the young lady you're working with, is she able to articulate what she wants? Like you mentioned, like we want to talk about what she wants out of coaching and like what her goals are. Um, I mean, I've found some of the kids, I mean, I've worked a lot with teenage boys more, and they're like, oh, I don't know, like, I'm just here. My mom told me to be here, or whatever, So I'm wondering how much of that you deal with.
One of the most important questions I ask in that first inquiry call is, does your daughter know that you're reaching out to me, that we're talking today? Is she interested in receiving support? If she's adamantly against it, I'm not going to be able to be successful. Mm-hmm. But if you get anything other than a strong no in teen speak, that's probably a yes. I would like some help.
Yeah.
So I don't really, with parents, they have a different experience with their kids than I do. So often in the call, they'll say, oh, she's really shy, or she doesn't talk much. She's very closed. She's very private. They, give me these types of descriptions. And to be honest with you, I don't even take it in, because my job, and, not to toot my own horn, but I think I'm pretty good at it, is to create this really safe, comfortable environment where they feel like they can tell me anything and they will not be judged, and I do not have an agenda, and I don't need them to be different than they are. And I let them know this is a little different than therapy, and that you are in charge here, and you're letting me know what it is that you want to feel different, be different. And yes, some girls might have a little bit of trouble articulating that, but my job, using the tools that I use and also using my line of questioning, is to help them to be able to articulate that, because I do believe they do know it on the inside. They just need the right questions to be asked.
Yeah, that's it's super interesting, because like you're making a very stark distinction between therapy and coaching, which is, I think, so tell me a little bit, what's the difference between the two?
So I have a document that kind of outlines side by side therapy versus coaching. And a very important line on the top of that document is, I believe that good coaching and good therapy certainly overlap. Mm-hmm. So I think to simplify it, one difference is, with therapy, it can be a different lens. Like, I'm looking through what's wrong, what needs to be fixed, what diagnosis do I offer, what treatment plan am I laying out for this person. Whereas coaching, I see it as a little bit more empowering, that there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. If you're in a coaching environment, which I've assessed in our calls, and you're empowered to let me know what it is that you would like to see in your life to be different. And then my job is to work with you to throw out strategies, ideas, processes, new ways of being. And then your job, it's a very action-oriented process, is to take that strategy, try it out in between sessions. Let's see if it works. Let's see if it helps. If it doesn't, we're going to try a different strategy.
Okay. That makes sense. I mean, that sounds like, me as a fitness coach, and I do, I help people with their lifestyles. It sounds similar to that, right? Like, it's like, hey, what do you want? What are some of the things where you're stuck in your life? And how can I partner with you to get unstuck and find some new tools for your kid, to carry on with you,
Yeah,
Sounds
absolutely.
very similar.
Same.
So what are some common areas that you might be working on with these girls?
Mm-hmm. There are probably a handful of very common themes. One is definitely self-esteem and confidence. Another is friendships. That's a really big one, struggling with friendships. Communicating with parents is another big one. Anxiety and stress and pressure is really big in today's world. That's another hot topic. Those are probably the top ones.
Yeah. Having one daughter who's now out of her teens but still a young adult, and having another daughter who's 9 and kind of, working her way. Like, I'm already hearing her dealing with some of the things that you just mentioned, her friendships and her self-esteem and things like that. You start at 15.
Mhm.
With That's the age you start with. Is that, tell me a little more about why that age and not younger or
Mhm.
older.
So I started off knowing that I wanted to work with teenagers, and I started off with 13-year-olds to 25-year-olds. I do have a coach on my team, Miranda Dawn, who's wonderful. She works with girls 13 to 25. I work with girls 15 to 25. And really, it's just a personal preference. I really enjoy the more brain development they have, the more cognitive ability and nuance they have. And it's just more rewarding for me.
Yeah.
So that's really what it's about.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, at our gym we have youth programs, and sometimes I don't, but I loved coaching the teens class, and I really struggle with, like, we have like 8 to 10 year olds and like 5 to 7 year olds. I struggle with the younger ones, but I just love the teens, and I guess it's the same thing. It's you just kind of have a sweet spot.
Yeah, it's just personal preference. I've worked with the little ones in the past too, and they were fun.
Yeah. Um, so with some of these, so we've kind of started going down the road of, like, you do an intake, you figure out what they want and what they need, um, and then it sounds like you give them some homework and stuff, like, in between sessions. Can you tell
We
me a
call
little
it
bit?
life work.
Okay, yeah, tell me a little bit about this life work.
Yeah, so it's different for every girl. It's based on whatever she's dealing with. So if I look at this week, with a few of the girls that I'm coaching, so one girl's life work is she's going to reach out to a new potential friend and ask her to hang out because her one of her coaching goals is developing friendships. Another girl, I'm asking her to walk around the school in every moment of every day and to look for potential new friends and girls that are similar to her, that are aligned with her values, that look like they might be a little bit on the outside and might be in need of a friend. Because this is a girl that tends to want to be in the popular group, and that's not working for her.
Mm.
And, there's a lot more to say about that, but that's her life work. Another girl's life work is how to respond to her mom in such a way to not escalate the arguments. And so she's learning communication skills and how to respond. And there's just such a wide variety. So it's acting on, you've got a main goal. I want better friendships. I want a better relationship with my mom. I want to be less anxious I have another girl that has a lot of social anxiety. She has a really hard time doing things on her own. And so her life work might be, she would choose it. I wouldn't dictate it, but she might say, okay, this week I'm going to go get gas all by myself. So we're basically using exposure therapy for her to get more comfortable and more confident. So it's different for every girl, but it is an action-oriented process so that she can feel empowered, that she's making these changes, she's seeing the changes, and she knows that they're coming from her.
Yeah, I'm kind of like thinking through this, like I'm thinking about myself as a teen, because a lot of most of us make it through our teenage and young adult years without a coach. Is there, like, and I'm a big believer that everybody needs a coach. I don't care who you are and what you're doing. I think everybody needs a coach. I mean, sports is an easy one because we're used to that, but business coaches, all different kinds of things. So, what is it about the girls that come to you that are different, that, like, maybe there was something that necessitated this coaching relationship?
Well, I wouldn't even say there's anything different about them. I think the girls that we see are what they're experiencing and living are very common for the majority of teen girls. So, as I mentioned earlier, my job is to make sure in that first phone call and that first intake that coaching is the appropriate form of support. Some girls need something more intense. They might need something more therapeutic, like therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say that there's anything different about them. I think often their parents see they're struggling in some way and they feel ill-equipped. They don't know. They've tried what they know. It doesn't seem to be helping. And some of that is just because the nature of a teen relationship with their parent when they're trying to separate and be independent. Parents might be doing everything right, but the daughter is not receptive just based on being a teenager. So sometimes that coach relationship can really offer what it is that she needs to grow and change.
Yeah. What are some of the, I guess, what are some of the, you've been doing this for quite a while. What are some of the common successes that you see? I mean, what are the results that a lot of these young ladies are getting?
I like to say, I mean, so many, so many. I like to tell parents that woven into every single coaching session we have, we are working on identity. That's one of the most important, it's one of the two most important developmental tasks during adolescence, identity and independence. So identity is, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What are my values? What do I believe in? That's all identity. And they're really exploring that in adolescence, which is ages, 12 to 25. It's long. And successes, when you ask that, my first thought was really identity, is them knowing themselves better. I can think of a girl that I was just coaching with today. I would say one of the biggest things we're working on is her knowing herself and knowing what works for her and what doesn't. And she's beginning to listen to her gut or listen to her heart versus only focusing on people pleasing. How can I make sure everyone else is happy instead of myself? So what that means for her tangibly is that she went from an AP class in pre-cal to a regular level, because that's what was needed for her to not be so stressed and feel like a failure. That was difficult for her because her identity was, I'm an AP student. Yeah. So it was a big thing. As an adult, it might sound like not a big deal, but for a teenager, it is a big deal to adjust your identity and make a choice that's difficult to make because it's for your best interest and it's also for your mental health. So that is one. So many. So girls making choices that are in alignment with their mental health, girls letting go of friendships that are toxic and choosing people that really highlight and bring out the best in them. Girls that make choices that reduce their anxiety and stress. Girls being able to communicate and stand up for themselves and use their voices and have their own backs, whether it's with their parents or their peers or their coaches or administrators. Just so many successes.
Well, what's super cool, like I'm listening to you speak about this, and I work with adults now mostly, and so many adults I'm working with struggle with what you're talking about right now. Some keywords that you said that are some of the first things I try to do when I'm working with people: values and purpose. There are so many adults that I know that they haven't clearly defined what their own purpose is, and they haven't clearly defined what their values are, and so they're kind of floating around the world not being able to kind of articulate these things, and they know how to draw boundaries and so on and so forth. So what are some things that you do with these girls that you work with to help them figure out their purpose and their values?
Yeah, so that's really woven into almost every session as well. So for example, one of the very early tools that I use with them is called My List. And I'm giving you a long list of options for your values, your interests, your talents, your passions, and you're checking off your top 10. And then I'm asking you to reduce it to your top 5. And girls, especially in today's world, they're so busy and overscheduled and tired. They're not sitting back. They're not laying in a hammock in the backyard asking, what are my values? What are my passions? What are my interests? What are my talents? They are not doing it and they don't have time. So when you sit in a coaching session and I'm presenting you with these questions and you're being forced to reflect and answer and think about them, well, now you know yourself better. Yes. And now you're learning more about, oh, this is a talent of mine. This is a strength of mine. I am good at that. And I'll say one of the most important pieces of my work is holding up a mirror, metaphorically, and showing these girls who they are. I had a girl in my office this afternoon, and she is really struggling with her mental health, her happiness. She feels like her parents have no faith in her and that they've given up on her. These are her words. So my job is to remind her those thoughts, those beliefs that you have in your head, they're telling you a story that is not true. And it is impacting your level of happiness. So let me tell you what I see, the person that I know. And then I begin to tell her what I see in her. And you literally can see their eyes, like as they're taking it in. And they're starting to begin to hear a different story about who they are. So my job, when I think about what you just said about the adults, and I was one of those adults that had to learn all of these things as an adult. I don't want the girls, I don't want any girls, but the girls that I work with, I don't want them to have to wait till they're 35, 45, 55 to learn their values, their purpose, their worth, who they are, why they're here. That is too late. Why would we do that?
Yeah.
So I see that as a huge part of my work.
Yeah, and that storytelling that you're talking about is so important because we float through our lives telling ourselves a story as if it were true, and then we start acting like it's true. And if we get in, like me, I got into my 30s telling myself stories before I finally started to question them or that those facts were checked, and I had to then it's like you said, it's too late. I've already formulated my personality and all these other things, and of course you can always change, but like with that storytelling, is there a activity that you do with them, or do you just kind of call it out and like you said, you say, hey, this is who I see, and help them to work through that? Or
it's both.
Yeah,
it's both. So I'll have girls write down every single thing about themselves that makes them a good friend, which can be hard for some girls. Or I'll write down everything. I ask them to write down everything about them that would constitute them as a success. So I want to put it in writing. I want it to be tangible. And it's uncomfortable for a lot of girls to really think about themselves in a positive light. Unfortunately, we have a world that likes to kind of put people in their place. And who do you think you are? You're so full of yourself. You're bragging versus you're owning all the good parts of you. And so I am sometimes pointing them out often, but I also want them to come from within, no matter how hard it is for them to come up with them. And that continues on through all of our work together. It's challenging those beliefs that they have, the stories that they tell about themselves. I'm always trying to kind of shine a light on the reality and challenging that.
Yeah, I love that. We all need people like that in our lives. And you've mentioned friendships. One of the things that this show's about, when I'm always trying to help people, is meaningful community. And that can be your family, that can be your friends, that can be, your colleagues, your schoolmates, whatever it is. And it sounds like that's a big focus of your work is those friendships and those relationships. So that makes me think about, okay, you're working with this individual, this girl, but she has these friends who might not be getting the coaching that you have. And how do you help that girl deal with those relationships and maybe some negativity and, like you mentioned, judgment and all that?
Yeah, it's common. It really is, unfortunately. But one tool that I use with girls that I ask them, to add to their toolbox is called your emotional guidance system. So often girls are taught, and some just do this naturally, is to shove down their feelings for a wide variety of reasons, especially in friendships, because girls have learned if I show my feelings that I am annoyed or angry or sad or I feel betrayed or confused, what could come back to me as a result of that is isolation. I could be alone. And that is the biggest fear of girls. So they're doing everything they can to avoid that. So when I talk to girls about their emotional guidance system, I tell them that, we all have feelings, we all have emotions, and our emotions are there to guide us. Our emotions are giving us information. It's not a bad emotion or a good emotion. It's not something to reject and try to not feel. It's there for a purpose. So if you're with a friend or a peer and you feel something unpleasant, I feel like I can't trust her, I feel unsafe, I feel uncomfortable, I feel judged, I feel criticized, that doesn't feel good. So that feeling is there as information to guide you. So it's not black and white, like, oh, I felt judged once, I'm dumping this friend, but it is information over time. And I do often with girls to try to quantify and help them to solidify what's going on in their world. I'll ask them a lot, scale of 1 to 10, or give me a percentage. So what percentage of the time do you feel good in this girl's presence? And what percentage of the time do you feel not good? And so we want to quantify it. So if she's like, wow, 80% of the time I feel judged or criticized or not accepted or not included. So that's good information to have. So now you can take that information and you can make a decision based on that information. And it's not wrong, whatever you choose. So I'm not going to judge her and say, okay, 80% of the time you don't feel good with her, you need to dump her. What are you doing? Right? That would be really disempowering. My job is to be here for as long as it takes for her to realize for herself, that's not a person I want in my life. That doesn't feel like friendship.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm guessing that you're empowering this girl to be a little bit of a coach for her friend, because maybe the friend is struggling and there's a method of communication of being a good friend to the other that might change that relationship, and make it less than 80%. Yeah, and what I'm also hearing you say, which is a big thing for me, is awareness, right? You're asking this girl to, hey, tune in and pay attention and be aware of what's going on under the surface when you're around these people or when you're having this conversation or when this experience is happening. And I think again, most of us are just completely disengaged and unaware and just kind of moving through our lives.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that because, I think a lot of us really feel like, well, whatever I'm thinking, that's what's guiding me. That's what I need to listen to. That's the truth, whatever thoughts are in my head. And I talk to girls all the time about your thoughts create your reality. Your thoughts create your feelings. So if you're feeling something unpleasant, notice, what am I thinking? So what I ask them often, I do this with parents too. I just can think of a parent this week I was working on this with, that I'm asking them to drop from their head into their heart or into their body. The body doesn't lie. The body gives us a lot of information if something is working for us or it isn't. The body gives us a signal, but we have to be quiet enough for a second and drop in to see what we're feeling.
Yeah, it's funny because my therapist always has me, hey, she'll, if I'm talking about a difficult situation that I had this past week or whatever, she'll be like, okay, think about that situation and tell me where you feel it in your body, and then that almost always kicks off like a great a therapeutic conversation, about, how to deal with that or, where it's coming from,
Yeah.
So I want to read you something and I want to get your reaction to it. I found this statistic. Nearly 1 in 3 teenage girls, 30% in the United States, has seriously considered attempting suicide, which marks a 60% increase over the past decade. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my first reaction to that is a feeling. It's heartbreaking to hear. It makes me very sad. And my thinking about it is, I guess it's surprising, but it also, just working with the number of girls that I've worked with and what they're having to deal with is exponentially more than we ever had to deal with when I was their age, in my generation. And we have a world that is expecting a lot more of them, that is putting a lot more on them. They're exposed to a lot more. We have a world that in many cases can feel pretty dangerous and threatening at times. They're not immune to that or protected from that in any way. And we also have a world that talks about mental health a lot. And so they're exposed to not only discussions of mental health that can be really helpful. They're exposed to labels and diagnoses that they don't always have all the information about. And they're also exposed to ways that people handle their pain, one of which is suicide. It's around them. They're hearing it, they're seeing it, they know it's an option. And I also know from working with some, girls in my practice that sometimes they're using words like, why am I here? What is the point of all this? And it sounds like suicide, but it's because they don't have other language to say, like, I'm in pain, I'm struggling, I'm lost, I don't know how to feel better, I feel alone. So I would love to see us give them more language to better communicate their pain.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting take on it. And I think that my feeling about, being in the military, suicide's a big thing. This is a major issue that us leaders are trying to deal with. And in dealing with that with some people, sometimes when I'm talking to somebody who's expressing suicidal thoughts or ideations, when I really get to it, there's an aspect of their life that is painful and they want to end, and so they will articulate it like, I want my life to end, because it feels like it's pervasive across their whole life. But what they're really saying is, I need to address this issue. This needs to end. It's killing me, but people do misinterpret that, and people then actually sometimes do commit suicide, misinterpreting some of this pain that they're having, not to minimize it or make it that simple, but
right, of course.
Yeah. Okay, I have something that I want to read something else. This is something that you put in your social media.
Okay.
In order to improve your relationship with your teen daughter, she has to feel good in your presence.
Yep.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I guess I'm going to start with myself. I'm going to be a little vulnerable. When I was growing up, I did not feel that in my mother's presence. And because I didn't feel accepted or celebrated or wanted for who I was, what the result was a pretty bitchy teenager. I was not fun to be around. And it was basically a very immature response, like, oh, you don't like me? Well, I don't like you either, which got us nowhere. So fast forwarding to today, I can think of a mom that I was just working with this week. This mom is very dedicated and devoted to her children. She really wants to have a close relationship with them. But based on patterns, she's struggling. I'll talk about with one of her daughters, and she'll her daughter will be around her and she'll say, like, she's just acting like a little bitch. And my daughter, she just comes to me when she wants money. And then, is it okay if I cuss on this podcast?
Yes, we cuss a lot on this
podcast. Okay. I mean, I work with teenagers, so there's a lot of cussing.
Yeah.
And so the daughter is like being really rude and bitchy to the mom. And the mom's like, I just want to look at her and tell her to fuck off. And so the mom is angry at her daughter, like, why are you not nicer to me? And, why do you speak to me that way? And so what I was talking about with this mom, and I could see that it landed, it's not only about what you say. I say often it's about your energy. I can walk into a room and I can feel your energy without even speaking to you. I can feel whether it's positive or negative. So I said, your daughter is feeling your fuck off energy. So anyone that is healthy mentally and emotionally would protect themselves from fuck off energy. Who would say, oh, I want to be around that some more?
Yeah.
Nobody. So that landed. So this is in alignment with that quote you just read. I said, think about when your daughter was a little toddler. You gave and you gave and you gave and you gave some more. Changing diapers and feeding and holding and bathing and reading and putting to bed. And you got very little back. It was a lot of giving. in this, and it paid off, right? There was probably some sweet spots there in elementary school where she was nice to you and smiled and hugged you. Here we are. We're back in that dynamic where if you want to repair and build and grow this relationship of connection and love and sweetness and kindness and sharing, you're going to be giving a lot more than you're getting right now. And the payoff is coming. You're dropping love drops in this love bucket every day. So if you want her to want to be with you and to share with you, be honest and open and loving and kind, it starts with you. It starts with your energy. You're the parent. You're the role model. She's the child with the underdeveloped brain who's learning.
And I think that's such an important message for parents to hear, because all kids, no matter what is going on, are difficult at times. It's the condition of youth, and sometimes parents really do take it as a, sometimes parents will play the victim role, right? Like, my child is victimizing me, and I think that's really hard. And people will then they carry that out, that energy, that then they reflect back. So now I'm defensive and you're defensive, and it just keeps carrying on, and it goes deeper and deeper. And I think that's a message that what you just shared is a message that I think a lot of parents need to hear. Is I need to think about, what energy am I putting off, and am I having gratitude for at all? I think a characteristic of healthier, happier people is just kind of approaching life with a good amount of gratitude.
Absolutely.
Because even in that difficult moment with your child, there's many things you could be grateful for.
100%.
Yeah. So this is probably a good transition for the show. You work a lot with teenage girls, but you work with the parents of tweens and teenage girls also. Tell me a little bit more about that work. I mean, we've kind of already identified a lot of times it's the parents that need more help than the child itself. So talk to me about how that work goes and what you do with them.
Yeah, that's a little bit different in that I work with parents on an as needed basis. So there might be parents that I work with, weekly for a year. There might be parents that I meet with monthly. It just depends on their needs. Some parents just call me when something comes up and they need help in that moment. And it's all great. Whatever they need, I'm here for it. And it really runs the gamut, about what it is that they're seeking help with. But I would say a theme that runs throughout really is communicating in such a way that there's mutual respect so that you can be heard, they can be heard. And also really, I think, transitioning the relationship where you can allow for their identity to grow, you can allow for the independence that's necessary while also maintaining guidance and influence versus control that you had when they were younger. So those are some big themes, but a lot of it is really about connection, is having a good, loving, respectful relationship with this child that's growing into an adult.
Yeah, and that's hard for a lot of parents, because depending on their upbringing, like, what is their level of skill at communicating love, at telling, at loving, feeling loved enough to also emit love. I think there's, for a lot of people, there's, so an example from my childhood is my mom was a single. I never knew my biological father, so already off the bat I felt like, oh, I am I'm unwanted. I mean, it's a story. You talk about storytelling, right? As a young child, you just tell yourself that story. And then because my mom was a single mom, she wasn't around that much because she was working and trying to put food on the table, and but the story I tell myself is no one wants to be around me.
Yes.
And so I start acting out. And my mom also grew up in, her own challenges. So where I'm really going with this fast forward is that now I'm a parent, and I'm having to learn how to tell my kids that I love them and that they are wanted, and that, even when they're being assholes, even when, things are really ugly. Um, so I guess that was a really long-winded way of me wanting to ask you, what if you had to boil it down to a couple key things about parenting, like what do kids need? Like as a parent, what can you tell us? There's a lot of parents listening probably right now. At the very basic level, what do kids need? How can I be the best parent possible?
That's a big question. I think I'll start by saying, I think when we give birth or become parents to this child, it's a really natural feeling to feel like this person is mine. This person is an extension of me, and this is mine. And everything that this kid says or does out in the world reflects on me. I think that if we can really separate from that belief and see this child as separate, and you talk about gratitude, looking at this child and saying, wow, thank you for choosing me to be your mom or your dad or your guardian. I'm here to support you, to accept you, to love you, to celebrate you for who you are, that is very different from me. You're not here to be me. You're not here to be your siblings. We don't need another Barb. We need you. That's why you're here. So the more that we can kind of separate our ego and really allow to kind of, I think, look with curiosity, like, who is this child? What matters to them? Like, what drives them? What turns them on? And really allow for that, make room for that, be curious about it, celebrate it, and really ask, how can I support them? How can I help them to feel accepted and loved for exactly who they are? Maybe C's are the best grades they can make. Who cares? Maybe they're not here to make A's, but they're going to be amazing in something else. So it's like really challenge yourself to really set aside what you believe they should be, or what you believe success looks like, or what you believe a good child looks or acts like. So, I say that my son is my greatest teacher. I think our children are our greatest teachers. So often I had to say, wow, he is nothing like me in this way. I could double down and I could be the colonel in the house because I was raised by one. I could double down and I could try to control him, and I could try to squash his independence and his spirit. And all that would happen is it would sever our relationship, and he would probably do a lot of lying. Mm-hmm. And he would do what he's going to do. And that is not what I wanted. So I knew I have got to change the way that I thought I was going to parent this child, and the way that I was parented will not work with this child. Because I don't want to kill his spirit. Wow, that was a long-winded answer to your question.
It was so beautifully articulated, though, because I think there were so many things in there for parents listening that like they can really hold on to. One of which I think the message is that environment of acceptance, like who you are is acceptable here. I'm not trying to make you something that you're not, and you're going to be loved no matter what, even when we fight, or even when you do something, even insert the blank, right? No matter what, you are loved and wanted here. And and then I think the other thing that you mentioned is curiosity. So often, I'm going to use some social work speak, since you were social work also, but like resistance theory, right? The more I push on you, the more you're going to push back on me. And it's a quick way to just create a divide and a fracture in a relationship. But if I don't push on you and I allow it, so it's then what do I do now? Now let me just be curious. Let me just ask a bunch of questions and you can teach me some things, and I want to understand. And I don't think enough parents do that. They don't go through the process of just trying to understand what this kid is going through, you know?
Yeah, it's the difference of I want you to be X versus asking the question, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What do you want? What does success look like for you? What feels good to you?
Yeah.
Get curious.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an important, well, just, all people, learning how to parent somebody, or learning how to coach somebody is the same. It's going to help you with all relationships in your life. So one last, as we're kind of we're bringing this to a close a little bit. Someone's going to be listening to this and they're going to be struggling. This is going to sound like something they want and need. How can people get a hold of you? What are some ways that people can work with you? Help some people out here.
So my website, barbsteinberg.com, you can learn a lot about who I am and what I offer. And there's a contact page, so you can contact me there. I know that not everybody can afford one-on-one coaching. So I really have worked hard to make sure that I have created access to a lot of helpful information to all the parents out there. So on my website, you'll find blogs. I have a YouTube channel with my name. It's all you got to, Barb Steinberg. It's got over 300 videos on parenting. I've got e-courses on almost all the topics that we've covered today that are very affordable. So Instagram, loads of content there to help parents. Of course, Facebook too. So those are all the ways you can get in contact with me, and I'm happy to help in any way I can.
And you do workshops. I saw recently that you were talking about workshops that you do. So
November 13th, I have a workshop called Navigating Girls' Friendships, Connection and Conflicts. And it's for parents to help their girls with their friendships.
That's awesome. And just a curiosity of mine is, I know you are local to Austin, and the majority of my audience is kind of like Austin and the greater area. But are there people you work with that aren't in the area?
I work with people all over the world.
Okay, perfect.
So that's the nice thing about social media. It is, given me access to people all over the world. So yeah, I'm happy to work with anybody, anywhere.
Awesome. Well, speaking of gratitude, I want to just express so much gratitude for you. How you're showing up in the world and the work that you're doing, and how clear you are about who you are and who you want to work with, and the difference you want to make with these people is evident, and it's inspiring. And I'm just so grateful there's people like you out there doing what you do. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that. And I would say the same right back to you.
Thank you. You've been an amazing guest. Thank you for being on the show, and keep doing what you're doing. It's so awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.